Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that your name be glorified in all that we do. As we begin this very unique week in the Catholic Church, that we may always be mindful not only of where you are leading us, but where we are focused to go. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is, of course, in the church calendar, it is Monday of the 31st week of Ordinary Time. In the secular calendar, obviously, it is Halloween. Strangely enough, because Halloween has a religious connection, even though it is a completely secular holiday. And what is the religious connection? Well, of course, if you know the history of Halloween, you know that the actual name for Halloween is from Old English, All Hallows Eve, because tomorrow is the Solemnity of All Saints, which, of course, we recognize celebrating all the saints in the Catholic Church. So tomorrow is the Solemnity of All Saints, and therefore today is All Saints' Eve, which in Old English is All Hallows' Eve, and that's where Halloween comes from. That's why, by the way, I'm one of the people who always spells Halloween with an apostrophe. So it's always the last, four letters are W-E apostrophe E-N, because what it really is shortening the word evening. So Halloween properly spelled is with an apostrophe. I'm not going to focus too much on Halloween today because, again, it's a secular feast, or holiday. It's not a feast. It's a secular holiday. Well, it's a feast on candy, I'll put it that way. But anyway, it's very secular. So in that sense, Halloween is secular. It is not really connected to the church. In another program, on the afternoon program a couple of weeks ago, I talked about Halloween from Providence, Rhode Island, which is the home of H.P. Lovecraft, who died a starving artist, but he was a horror and fantasy writer, and his writings inspired just about every horror writer, including Stephen King, I imagine Frank Peretti, and many other horror writers. But of course, my focus today is not on horror. But what it is on the gospel reading. This is from Luke. Remember, Luke is kind of like the social justice gospel. It is the love your neighbor type teachings. Obviously, the commandments in the Bible are love God and love neighbor. So obviously, we're called to do both. But there is a strong focus on love your neighbor in the Gospel of Luke. And so there is that as well. So love your neighbor and love God and love your neighbor. As I said, in Luke, there's a lot of that. So, for example, another one of the readings that we've talked about here is the story of Lazarus and the rich man. Of course, that's the man who is, it's parable, who is living high off the hog, as the saying goes, and Lazarus is outside his door, and he's doing absolutely nothing for him. That whole story, all of that you can find in Luke. So today's gospel talks to us about inviting people who could never pay you back. And you know, a lot of Catholic communities like to do this for Thanksgiving, which is coming up in about 3 weeks. And that is, they love to hold Thanksgiving dinner for those members of their community who have nowhere else to go. Very common among the immigrant communities. Because, of course, the immigrant communities, their families oftentimes are back in the home country. And so a lot of the immigrant communities want to take care of those who are immigrants. And then, of course, for Thanksgiving, a lot of the homeless shelters do a lot for Thanksgiving. And it's all about caring for your neighbor. One of the warnings I always like to give in that, by the way, is, yes, remember your neighbor at Thanksgiving. Remember your neighbor your needy neighbor at Thanksgiving. Remember your needy neighbor at Christmas, but don't forget your needy neighbor in the heart of February. And that's an important distinction because we can always remember everyone at Christmas, but when the temperatures are very cold, February is the coldest month in New England. So, not the coldest, the snowiest month in New England, sorry. And so remember your neighbors then, and that's something I'm always concerned about as far as the homeless go, especially when it's about 2 degrees outside and it is just so scary for people who have no place to go. And of course they bring people in and they let them stay in shelters and stuff. Because it is not survivable. And I always remember your neighbors at that time. And so here we are, we're looking at these powerful words from Luke about inviting people to dinner, which a lot of people do around Thanksgiving in parishes and churches and everything else, who cannot pay you back. Always remember the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Now understand that when you say the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, etc., remember the context. Always remember Jesus is speaking to essentially 3 audiences when we see anything written in the Gospels. There is the audience to whom he's actually speaking to in the gospel. There is the audience to whom Luke is writing to in the first century, and then there's you. So he's essentially speaking to 3 audiences. And so when we're reading that, we may not understand that the blind and the lame do not receive any kind of government assistance in the time of Jesus. They were just blind and lame. I'm going to talk about that on the other side of the break. And they had to live off what people could be generously helping them with. So we're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WEZE. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudioMedia.com. That's CatholicAudioMedia.com. Check out our website. Check out the archives of the show. Check out our Substack newsletter. You can do all kinds of things over there at CatholicAudioMedia.com. So anyway, we're talking about this powerful reading that's part of today's gospel reading from Luke. And one of the things that popped into my mind is when I was in Ecuador, this was back in, I think it was 1990. And, you know, when you're in a mission territory, you don't speak the language well. I mean, obviously I speak Spanish fine now, but I didn't speak Spanish well then. And one of the things it is, you get very tired very quickly because you've got the culture shock you're dealing with. You're in a whole foreign environment, even though I was there for 3 months, 2 or 3 months. And the language issue is big because your mind has to work double time to speak the other language. So as we were traveling to the various places, the recintos in Ecuador, one of the things that really fascinated me was that unfortunately there were lots of people that were missing legs, fingers, hands, arms, eyes. And probably a lot of it was through some form of an accident, some form of either farming or industrial accident. A real fascinating thing, obviously very sad situation, and knowing that they didn't get much support. I suppose they got some support from the government. Well, you can multiply that and go back to the time of Jesus, where it would not be uncommon to see someone who was missing a leg or an eye or or some form of limb and know that they had no support whatsoever. So when Jesus is saying those words, saying, come invite those people to dinner, that means to share from your abundance. And so when we share from our abundance, and that's what we're called to do, that's what he says. And those people are never going to pay you back. That's the problem. They're just never going to pay you back. And so knowing that and understanding that, you are there trying to help them as you can. And in doing so, you're acting as an agent of the Lord. And so there are a lot of parishes and everything. Now, you obviously may not be able to invite the homeless person to your Thanksgiving dinner, or for whatever reason they are homeless, but you can also do something else that'll work that out, and again, through the parish, or donating to your favorite homeless shelter. Or one of the things that's there is called a day shelter. A day shelter is exactly what it is. It's a place where people go during the day, and there's no place to live there at night. They have to go to another shelter at night. So Pine Street Inn in Boston is a nighttime shelter, but St. Francis House down the street from it, actually on the other side of downtown, is a day shelter. And so people go there, they receive breakfast, lunch there, and they have a place to go during the day. And then in the evening, they may go to Pine Street Inn. All of that is part of, if you help out these organizations, you are really helping. Dorothy Day's original soup kitchen is still open down in Hell's Kitchen, I believe it is. Down in the Chelsea area, actually, in New York, still open. Anyway, we will talk more tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation to the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.